Daredevil has always been a street-level hero. He's not the type to crack jokes while flipping through the air like Spider-Man, nor is he the wisecracking fourth-wall-breaking Deadpool. He's a man who fights in the dark, barely standing after every battle, carrying the weight of his choices. But when She-Hulk brought him back, it felt like he had walked onto the wrong set. Instead of the morally conflicted vigilante we knew, he suddenly became a rom-com guest star. Imagine if The Dark Knight had Christian Bale's Batman exchanging flirty one-liners while fighting Bane, or if John Wick started cracking jokes between headshots. It would completely shatter the tone and destroy the character's depth. That's exactly what happened with Daredevil and She-Hulk. His presence felt so out of place that it was like watching Walter White from Breaking Bad show up in Friends and start making wisecracks about cooking meth. In Daredevil Season 3, Matt Murdock is at his lowest point, struggling with faith, questioning his purpose, and doubting whether being Daredevil is even worth it. In She-Hulk, none of that pain or emotional weight exists. He's suddenly lighthearted, smiling in every scene, and effortlessly sliding into the sitcom tone, as if his past never happened. It's a complete rewrite of everything that made the Netflix Daredevil one of the most grounded and compelling superheroes ever put on screen. One of the most defining aspects of Daredevil's character was his fight scenes. Every hit felt real, every punch had weight, and every battle left him visibly exhausted. That hallway fight in Season 1 was legendary because it wasn't just about showing off cool moves, it was about survival. Daredevil wasn't a perfect fighter. He was a man barely getting through the night, fueled by pure determination. In She-Hulk, all of that realism was thrown out the window. The Daredevil we see here flips effortlessly, dodges attacks with ease, and moves like he's a CGI-enhanced superhero straight out of a Marvel video game. It feels weightless, over-choreographed, and fake like something out of a Spider-Man No Way Home action sequence, but without the stakes or the heart. Imagine if the Punisher suddenly started fighting like a martial arts expert, gracefully flipping through the air instead of brutally taking down enemies with raw aggression. Imagine if The Raid, one of the most intense action films ever, replaced its bone-crunching fights with overly choreographed wire-fu. That's exactly what happened with Daredevil's fights in She-Hulk. They became polished, sanitized, and completely disconnected from the brutal street brawls that made him such an iconic character in the first place. Matt Murdock's relationships have never been simple. Every love story he's had has been built on pain, loss, and sacrifice. His relationship with Elektra was a self-destructive spiral. His connection with Karen Page was riddled with guilt and emotional turmoil. Even Claire Temple, who literally stitched him back together multiple times, couldn't handle his world. Daredevil's love life has always been deeply tied to his suffering, making his connections feel raw and meaningful. Then She-Hulk turned him into a random hookup, reducing his relationship arc to a shallow punchline. The man who has spent years battling Catholic guilt, who has always struggled with personal attachment, suddenly becomes a rom-com side character sneaking out barefoot for laughs. It's like watching Bruce Wayne and the Batman hook up with someone for a quick joke, completely ignoring the fact that his entire character is built on emotional trauma and trust issues. Imagine if Logan treated Wolverine's love life as a series of meaningless flings, instead of deeply emotional losses that shaped his journey. Imagine if No Way Home brought back Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man but completely ignored Gwen Stacy's death. That's what She-Hulk did to Daredevil. It stripped away all of the emotional weight and turned him into a character that felt like a watered-down version of his former self, completely detached from everything that made him compelling. Daredevil's red suit was perfect. It was intimidating, practical, and visually striking without feeling over the top. It fit his gritty, realistic world, but when he showed up in She-Hulk wearing the bright yellow and red costume, it felt completely out of place. Instead of looking like a battle-worn vigilante, he looked like a cosplay version of himself, something more suited for a comic convention than a serious fight. Imagine if The Dark Knight Rises suddenly had Christian Bale's Batman wearing the Adam West blue and gray outfit. It would completely ruin the tone and break immersion. That's what happened with Daredevil's yellow suit. It wasn't just a different look. It actively worked against everything that made him feel grounded and believable in the first place. The issue isn't just the color, it's the presentation. The Netflix suit felt rugged, like something a street-level hero would actually wear. The yellow suit in She-Hulk looks brand new, overly polished, and unrealistic. It's the same mistake Wonder Woman 1984 made when it introduced her golden armor. It looked flashy, but it felt unnecessary and took away from the character's grounded presence. Daredevil's return should have been a moment of triumph, but instead, his appearance felt like a gimmick. Daredevil's past defines him: his father's murder, Stick's brutal training, his relentless battles against Wilson Fisk, his war with the Hand. Every part of his journey has been shaped by pain and struggle. Yet She-Hulk completely ignored all of it. There was no mention of Kingpin, no reference to Karen or Foggy, no acknowledgement of his time in the Netflix series. It felt like Marvel wanted to introduce Daredevil without bringing any of his baggage along, effectively turning him into a new character altogether. Imagine if Logan brought back Hugh Jackman but erased all references to his past, making him just another random mutant without any connection to his previous struggles. Imagine if No Way Home had Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man appear but never mention Uncle Ben or his tragic past. That's what happened with Daredevil and She-Hulk. His presence felt disconnected from everything that made him compelling in the first place. Daredevil was never meant to be a lighthearted, quippy hero. His world is dark, unforgiving, and filled with complex moral dilemmas. But She-Hulk turned him into a Saturday morning cartoon version of himself, completely detached from his own history. It wasn't just a disappointing return, it was a fundamental misunderstanding of who Daredevil is and why fans love him. One of the things that made Daredevil so compelling in the Netflix series was his intelligence. Matt Murdock wasn't just a brawler. He was a brilliant lawyer, a master strategist, and someone who always stayed one step ahead of his enemies. His ability to read people, analyze situations, and anticipate attacks made him feel like Marvel's answer to Batman. But in She-Hulk, that sharp mind seemed to vanish. He felt less like the calculating, strategic thinker we knew and more like a guest star who was just there for comedic relief. His legal expertise, which was a crucial part of his character, was barely showcased. Compare that to Daredevil Season 1, where Matt used his legal knowledge to dismantle Wilson Fisk's empire piece by piece. Or even The Dark Knight, where Bruce Wayne's intelligence was just as important as his combat skills. Imagine if Tony Stark and Iron Man suddenly couldn't figure out how to fix his suit, or if Sherlock Holmes and Sherlock stopped being a genius and became just another detective. That's what She-Hulk did to Daredevil. It made him feel less competent, less intelligent, and ultimately less like the hero we admired. Daredevil's world was always dark, gritty, and filled with moral complexity. The Netflix series thrived because it was willing to explore heavy themes like justice, revenge, guilt, and faith. Even when Matt was victorious, if She-Hulk was meant to give fans a taste of the upcoming Daredevil, Born Again, then it's not a good sign. If this is the direction Marvel wants to take Daredevil, then fans might be in for a massive disappointment. We've already seen Marvel take serious characters and turn them into comedic versions of themselves. Look at how Thor went from the powerful warrior in Thor and the Avengers to a bumbling goofball in Love and Thunder. Look at how Hulk went from an uncontrollable force in The Incredible Hulk to the silly Professor Hulk we see now. Daredevil was one of the last few serious, grounded characters in the MCU, but She-Hulk proved that Marvel isn't afraid to water him down just to fit their current formula. If Born Again follows the same trend, we won't be getting the brutal, intense Daredevil we loved. We'll be getting a sanitized, quippy, MCU-friendly version that lacks all the depth and intensity that made him great. The real question is, does Marvel still understand what made Daredevil special? Or are they going to rewrite him to fit the MCU's current tone, lighter, safer, and more commercially appealing? Because if they do, we're not getting Daredevil back. We're getting a watered-down imitation that looks like him but lacks everything that made him legendary.